Hi, it's Paulie here. Glee, no booze today because we're outside and I have to drive home. Num. Anyway, so I don't know how well you guys are informed about the Fate system. When we talk about old school role-playing, I think kind of what almost sets off that line is things like the Fate system, where it goes from running straight numbers and a fairly simplistic form of play where we've got, you know, rolling to hit, we've got hit points and whatever, to things like the Fate system, which is a lot more kind of high concept. It can be problematic to play. Sometimes it ends up more like a legal negotiation than an actual adventure. It depends on how well you engage. However, a real gem of the Fate system is this piece of utterly glorious insanity. Legends of Onglare. This thing is fantastic. Now, this is based on a British comic book, kind of like the 2000 AD books that used to come out, you know, that had Judge Dredd and DR and Kench and all these sorts of things in them. But this was a fantasy and science fiction one. It was Star Blazer Adventures, but Anglerre was the fantasy tales that ran in this thing. This thing is absolutely barking crazy. It's magnificent. I didn't read those comic books, I'm afraid. I got to track them down. I did see 2000 AD. But I can see as I go through this, its roots. Its fancy roots are way more Moorcockian. It's not Tolkien. This is kind of the crazy Moorcock, weird, esoteric, kind of acid-based ideas. You can also see it comes from the same roots that spawned, I guess, things like Warhammer. It's spectacular. But anyway, so this is a fantasy thing. It's not necessarily set in the Onglare world. It gives you fantasy-based tools for making a role-playing game. So, at its core, Fate's kind of an interesting idea. What you do is you design a character. You come up with aspects for your character. Yes, you design, you know, characteristics and so forth, but a huge part of it is kind of defining the story and the tale of your character. And as you design your character, you kind of design a series of tags that come with your character, things that you can bring into the play. So some of these are aspirational. I will be the finest swordsman in Anglerre. Or I will find the man that slew my family and I will destroy him utterly. I will take my vengeance against the Duke of such and such. I will find the dark secrets lost in the ancient city of Bling. You can put these down as aspirations. There are also tags you can put down that just say, you know, oh, I'll just laugh it off. They've got a nice design system for choosing these, because the idea is to have these things. They give you a bonus if you can bring them into play. But you have to kind of convince the umpire that this tag kind of applies at this point. There's a nice set of guidelines saying, one of the bonusy kind of tags I've got is that, my character's just lucky. It says that's a bad tag, because it doesn't really give us anything story-wise to work with, and the umpire should say no. My character has strange luck is a better positive tag to put on, because yes, it means you might get something where good stuff happens, but it can also mean the umpire can reach in and make weird stuff happen, or things that will suddenly link you into part of the story. You find this weird thing, these things happen. So it's all about bringing people into the story. So they've got these magnificent guidelines all the way through for how, you know, to bring things into better storytelling. Things have aspects in the game, and this kind of triggers open to virtually everything, because things are described as a series of aspects, but that goes from people to places to buildings to, you know, seagoing ships to whatever. So you can design things by putting aspects on them, and when you're in a scene, a role-playing scene with things, you can kind of try and trigger some of these aspects if you think they will help you out. So if this is a dark, gloomy kind of room, and it's also got lots of rubble and rubbish in it, if you're in a fight and fighting and you need to get away, you can try and say, I'm going to try and bring into play the fact that this place is gloomy. I'll see if I can slip off into the shadows. I'm going to try and trip this guy it's full of rubble and crap, so do I get a bonus for trying to trip him if I pay some points? You get these fate points that you can play, and fate points are the currency, the role-playing currency that's used in the game. And that's why you trigger some of these negative aspects and so on. If you trigger a negative aspect yourself, the umpire gives you some fate points. If the umpire, who's got a list of all your things, triggers something, like you've said you are going to be the finest swordsman in Anglerre or whatever, it's like you've heard that there's this top-notch swordsman, he's killed 3 million people last Tuesday, he's looking for you, he's got a picture of you, well, I meant in more of a sense of as I go up the levels, clearly this is a long-term thing I'll be working on. No, you've heard he's wandering the streets looking for you. If the umpire triggers something like that, you can decide whether you'll kind of accept it, embrace it, or not. If you say, oh, no, I'm getting out of here, I'm just kind of, no, we're avoiding this, you get to pay the umpire fate points to make it go away. Or if you accept it, it gives you the points. The fate points are used to affect your dice rolls, to get re-rolls on things. They can be a get out of jail free if you die. Now the funny thing, everything comes off aspects, even combat. So when you fight someone, everyone essentially has the same level of hits that they take before they go out of action. You don't die, you go out of action. More on this later. So instead, when you get a combat result, it'll give you a number of points that will come off your overall endurance. But what you can do is you can take a new effect on yourself to negate a certain amount of points loss, a minor or a major or an extreme effect. And these effects will do something like, oh, it's got my arm, I'll get a -2 on my rolls, this is a minor effect. Or it's like, oh my god, you've broken my leg, oh, I'm reeling, I'm unconscious. Or a major thing, it's like, oh, I'm bleeding, I've only got 4 more rounds to finish this combat before I bleed out. But they stop you going into that negative, in which case you're out. Armor also takes hits that prevent this kind of damage. The tougher the armor, the more these kind of negative aspects it can take on itself. So if you've just got leather, it can just do a minor. If you've got like a set of plate, it can absorb a major effect rather than you taking the damage. So this is actually quite clever game design. Everything works on this nice kind of fate point budget aspects system. So another thing that we get in this game is stunts. Your skills can all have stunts attached to them. You have an extensive budget of stunts that you can go through, and you purchase these as part of your character design at the start, or as you get experience points and so on, you can purchase further and further stunts. Some stunts obviously have other stunts as a prerequisite, building up to more spectacular kind of things. Stunts are spectacular moves that are attached to a certain skill. So it's like sword fighting is fine, disarming someone is a stunt, doing dives and rolls are a stunt, shooting weapons out of people's hands, all kinds of daring do sorts of stuff. These are stunts that you can gain during play. There is a beautiful magic system that goes with this. It's very, very extensive, and it's also wonderfully weird. The art from this original comic book informs everything in this. It's all through the book, and it's weird and it's beautiful. It's really kind of strange, more Cockian landscapes, giant sculpted cities but with huge sculpted faces kind of in the buildings, weird chaos creatures, multiple planes, and that's kind of where we get onto the world building. This is not necessarily set in this comic book world of Onglare, but there are fantastic rules here on how to set up your own campaign worlds. But this game works on different levels. It can be what we're kind of used to. You are just the characters that meet in the tavern, you're kind of very low level operators. But you could be, as part of character design, you kind of put yourself higher up. Well, we're kind of important in this kind of little duchy. We help protect this area. We are known to rulers. Sometimes we're asked to take, posses out, and, so you've got kind of minor unit leadership things happening, minor guild leadership and so on. You might end up quite important to a kingdom, in which case you might be asked to run military units, take naval expeditions out, go scouting in far lands. So all through this, there are ways of taking that scale up and up and up and up. So you can do things where you've gone from just simple characters playing to military units, from characters that are on like a naval ship and boarding and piracy and these sorts of things, to entire rules in here on like how to run naval campaigns and make diplomatic missions difficult and interesting. There's sort of a very interesting sort of plot beat system that they've set up for designing adventures, where you come up with kind of a flowchart for adventures and a series of problems that are going to turn up as players play their characters through the game, and as they have failed rolls, and as they fail to engage or see crews, stress goes on to the campaign or the scenario, exactly the way stress goes on people when they are damaged in combat. So what's happening is, it's exactly the same kind of mechanics that you use for hurting people in combat. You've got a list of effects that will kick in as certain amounts of stress comes in. These guys don't find this particular character, they don't make this contact, or the courier is killed before these guys get to him. Stress. Monsters are attacking these things, and these guys basically don't manage to save the princess, or these guys get in a major fight with one of the locals or whatever. More stress, and you've got things that kick in that make the campaign more and more difficult, until there are at high levels of stress. This is where you lose. No, bad guys call in the heavies to help. No, the plague runs wild and you haven't managed to solve it. The city goes down. So very, very interesting. Because it's a storytelling kind of game, it's not one where you just sort of take some damage and die. When your points vanish down to zero, you've taken major and minor effects on yourself, and no, you can't solve this anymore, you've got to take the damage. When you get to zero, you are out of action, but that just means out of action. There's kind of a bit of a discussion before the game begins about what your aims and goals and what your stress markers and so on are going to be. If this is, and this will change from encounter to encounter. So going into an encounter, you are fighting horrendous, vicious, man-eating Bengal tigers with, hideous mutations from chaos on them. That's life or death. If you lose this one, these things are going to eat you. This is fighting with the mighty pirates, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. When you lose in that, out of action might mean these guys take you down, and you wake up chained to a galley, or So there are opportunities here for the umpire to roll this over into more storytelling. It's a storytelling game. Just beautiful. There are fantastic guidelines here for starting up different planes of existence and so on. Huge charts for wandering weird, strange, other worlds, other realms. It seems to be like a major thing from the comic books. So lovely charts for designing what they are. What are the different natural laws? What are the different magical laws here? How does it butt up on other things? How do you move to and from it? How is this going to stress you? How's this going to do things to you as you walk around? Amazing piece of work. This is the most staggering fantasy adventure storytelling resource I've seen. Even if you don't like the fate system, and you may not like that kind of negotiating, triggering stunts, triggering aspects kind of thing, that may just be a bit too loyally for you. As a world design resource, this is absolutely superb. There are some backups for this, like there's a Legend of Onglare companion. This is filled with adventures, and it's also filled with some extra rules, more military stuff in particular. They seem to be really quite taken on that idea of running kingdoms and running expeditions and so on. So it is supported. This is really well worth digging out. Like I said, just as a resource for fantasy world design, but also take a close look at it for your games in other things, for things like rolling over effects and events so that they contribute to more storytelling. That's very important, I think, in games. I think we often lose track of the fact that we're here to engage you in an adventure, not to kind of beat you down and just kill your character and get you out of play. And those very, very clever guidelines for making background elements that are better at involving you in more story. I'm not lucky, I have strange luck. I've got contacts everywhere. It's like, I've got some pretty weird contacts. Or I'm not like, yeah, sometimes strange things happen. No, a very specific series of wanting some bad things are attached to my character, which can be brought in for play. Lovely idea, I think. Literally, should be more of it. Anyway, Legends of Onglare. The Fate system. You can download the Fate system all over the place, but of all the Fate system settings and source books I've seen, this actually is the best. It takes those tools and really shows you how to use them to make a cracking good game. So yeah, well worth a look at. Legends of Onglare. Anyway, if you like the videos, like, subscribe, catch me on Patreon. Cheers!